right, well, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us today for our webinar with Michael Jenkins of the Florida Plant Conservation Program. My name is Stacy Matrazo. I'm the Executive Director of the Florida Wildflower Foundation. And for those of you not familiar with our organization, our mission is to protect, connect, and expand native wildflower habitats through education, research, planting, and conservation programs. Our work is made possible primarily through the sales and renewals of the state wildflower license plate. And whether you've got this old look here or our new design, you are supporting our work and we thank you. These funds, along with donations and memberships, allow us to support and create projects that build awareness and knowledge of Florida's native wildflowers and plants. And we'd like to encourage those of you who find our programs valuable to consider becoming a member, making a donation, or purchasing the state wildflower license plate. Be sure to check out our website as well. We have lots of resources on planting and growing wildflowers, information on where wildflowers are blooming, upcoming events, and information on the programs that your support are helping to provide. We're also on social media. You can find us on most platforms at FLA Wildflowers. I have just a couple of housekeeping items to go over before we get started. All attendees are muted. Your cameras are off. If you have questions, I apologize. Our Q&A feature is not working today, but we do have the chat. So feel free to enter your questions in the chat and we will get to them at the end of this program. The webinar is being recorded and it will be available on our YouTube channel and on our website in about 24 to 48 hours. So you'll be able to watch this again. And now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our speaker. Michael Jenkins is the Florida Plant Conservation Program biologist. He's worked with federal, state, and local organizations, as well as private and volunteer organizations, mapping, managing, and monitoring the amazing biodiversity in several areas of the country. In Florida, he worked statewide with the Department of Environmental Protection's Bureau of Invasive Species Management, Florida Park Service, private consultants, volunteer groups, and the Florida Natural Areas Inventory. And he now works for the Florida Forest Service's Florida Statewide Endangered and Threatened Plant Conservation Program that provide grants to help recover federally listed plants in Florida. Please welcome Michael Jenkins. I am just going to stop sharing my screen. And
okay, thank you for having me here. I try to get the word out about this grant program as much as possible. So this is great. We really appreciate it. This grant is available. It's for federally listed plants and at-risk plants to anyone, individuals, organizations, but it has to be non-federal. It can't be on federal land. This is money from the Endangered Species Act that goes to conservation of federally listed plants. But give you a little background, I've worked a lot in the country, got a degree in field ecology in Arizona in '95, but I've been working with several state organizations, federal organizations, private consultants. Here in Florida, Stacy has said the folks that I've worked with, but yeah, right now I'm with the Florida Forest Service. And so this presentation, we're just going to do a quick overview of the Florida Forest Service. There are some really interesting things that I do want to share about the Florida Forest Service, some really great things I was going to share, and then we'll do an overview of the plant conservation program, and then kind of what I'm doing with the plant conservation activities. Just do this pretty quick. So the quick overview, Florida Forest Service. I think a lot of people here probably know that there are some great state forests in the state, full of great biodiversity, great plant diversity, wildflowers. I would highly suggest getting out and spending some time on state forests. So many around. Southeast Florida does not have that much. Mostly, as you can see from this map, more in the other parts of the state, but anyway, they're great. They're fantastic places. They're wide open, usually kind of wide open for people to visit. And we'd love to have any kind of input that you have for the wildflowers on the state forest and anything like that. You can always contact me for that. But the mission statement is to protect Florida and its people from the dangers of wildland fire, manage the forest resources through a stewardship ethic, and assure they're available for future generations. The core program areas are wildfire prevention, detection and suppression, state land management, and forestry technical assistance. So yeah, they fight the fires in the state, and it gets, when there's a drought, there's a lot of activity going on. You can have hundreds of fires going on in the state at one time during a drought. And you can see why Florida is such a fire adapted. The plants are so fire adapted because you can have a cold front come through with a squall line that just strings fire across the whole state as it comes down. But it did start in 1927 with the Board of Forestry, and they help out the timber landowners, private landowners, the timber industry with pine beetle. They do a lot of pine beetle surveys. That we have a great. I want people to know that we have a really, really good entomology section. You look at Laurelwelt disease. To me, Laurelwelt disease is one of the more interesting plant pests, tree pests that we have. Look how quick this thing moved just in 10, 15 years, how quick this moved and took out most of the red bay trees and anything the Laurelwelt, just how quick that goes. This is a recent example of it's a fungus that came in and it kills anything in the Laurelwelt family, the bay family, the laurel family, avocados, things like that. But our entomologist did figure out a way to keep the trees from getting it, but it's pretty expensive. You can't really do it to all the plants. But we have a great entomology section especially for tree disease and stuff like that, plant pathogens and stuff like that. But you can see how quickly it took over Florida. Look at that. Just within 5 years, it had mostly, 10 years had mostly gone throughout the whole state. They do a lot of invasive treatments, a lot of Kogan grass, Lygodium. They collaborate a lot with FWC, with the SISMAs, for the invasive species, or these cooperative invasive species management areas. They do a lot of there through that. Just going to go through here real quick. Going back to the burning, just for information, you can get 120,000 burns in a year, over 2 million acres. That's a lot of burning. Florida does do a lot of burning, I think, as a lot of people here know. Probably more than most other states. And I'll talk about some more about that later, but we have it's kind of open and it's pretty, pretty straightforward and common sense on the burning here in the state. So you can look at the statutes and the codes there on this slide there to look at the burning statutes. But we're really lucky in Florida, in my opinion, to have such a well-run prescribed fire system here. But we also have the Florida Forest Service also has county foresters. Every county or region, sometimes you'll be missing, there'll be 2 counties or whatever, but usually every county will have a county forester, great people to work with, usually very knowledgeable about wildflowers. A lot of the times they are, or people within where they're at, usually at the, the county cooperative institution there's usually great resources there, so that we have county foresters, Field ops and forest protection, that's fighting wildflower, fighting wildfires, not fighting wildflowers. The wildflowers come from the fire, but I'm in forest management, and so we do a lot of the recreation, the timber management. We have a nursery I'll talk more about for pines that you can get pines from. The Andrews Nursery provides pines for a lot of the state. And then we have a training center too for learning how to burn and learn how to do all kinds of things. That's down at the bottom there. That's the Florida Center for Wildfire and Forest Resource Management. And going to the Andrews Nursery, I figured people would be interested. You can call their ask. There's kind of a minimum amount, smaller 250 to 500 seedlings if you're interested. The Andrews Nursery in Chiefland, you can call them. You can Google them too and find out Andrews Nursery. That's the Florida Forest Service too. So, a typical year of forest product sales, and this is non-timber here. I thought people would be interested in some of the non-forest things that people take off of the forest. Biomass. I'm very much in support of the biomass to be used for fuel wood. I think it helps with catastrophic wildfire, and I think it helps. The habitat too. I think you can do it in a way that benefits rare species and native species. I'm very much in support of the biomass, but people do harvest cabbage palms, whole cabbage palms. Sometimes we do have too many cabbage palms in there, and we'll want to remove them. They use the thatching for tiki huts. There's pine straw, pine cones, palmetto berries. We've come down a lot with the palmetto berries because they're a bear food. So wherever there's bear populations, we don't allow palmetto berries. But for people in this audience, if you don't know it, palmetto berries sales in Florida are skyrocketing, and they call it gold. It's like a gold rush. But that's more. Well, anyway, we're going to cross over into the Division of Plant Industry, which regulates that. But the Florida Forest Service does have sell palmetto berries, and there's a lot of poaching and stuff like that goes along too. Palmetto fronds, we have herbaceous ground cover, we have orange groves, we have worm grunting. People in this audience may be interested in knowing. There's worm grunting after they burn, especially around Tate's Hell and around east of Panama City. Folks for decades, they go out and they use a rasp in like a spring off of a truck, and they rasp them together, and it makes the worms come up, and they sell the worms. It's called worm grunting. But we have grazing on the forests. We have bees, beekeeping, apiaries. A lot of things go on in the forest besides timber. Quick run over, with the Carl funds and the Florida Forever, Preservation 2000, Florida Forever, that's when the Florida Forest Service really got a lot more acreage and stuff like that. The number of state forests greatly increased. We have Sustainable Forestry Initiative right now at several state forests. Our biggest ones included Blackwater, Tate's Hell. By the way, if you haven't been to Blackwater State Forest, you really need to go there and see the great pitcher plant bogs and stuff like that. I always try to remind people what an amazing place that is. You can just drive around and just have the greatest time out there botanizing out at Blackwater. Okay, gonna hurry it up here. So we had the 80th anniversary in 2016. 2018, they got over 1 million acres with 38 state forests. Average cost about $18 an acre to run. That was back in 2013. Okay, now we're just going to do an overview of the program. So the program here, the one that I'm working with, this grant program, it comes from the Endangered Species Act, Section 6, traditional funds. And so the federal government, as they're trying to recover the species, they do a lot on federal lands. These funds are for non-federal lands to help recover species on non-federal lands, to fill in that gap. Anybody can apply, individuals, organizations, whatever. And we just try to tell people, get in touch with the United States Fish and Wildlife Service main biologist on the species that you're working with first, and find out what needs they have, and then apply for the grant. This was initiated in 1991 by Dennis Hardin. He was the forest ecologist for the Florida Forest Service. Great forest ecologist, great banjo player, great guy. So, we get about $240,000 a year to do about 4 to 13 projects, done over 100 projects, 90 different researchers and 30 different institutions, over 100 species benefited. I would like to say, if you are working with species of plants, go to our website and look to see if we have any reports done for them. We have a PDF that has every species that we've worked with in the report title for it. There's also a searchable database that you can do, searchable by managed area, county, institution, species, things like that. So this is just a distribution of our forests and of our programs. And so we got a pretty good coverage over the state. You can see the hot spots are Lake Wales Ridge, where you have, rare plant hot spots. So yeah, in Florida, we have we're lucky to have the FDACS, the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. They're the mother organization of the Florida Forest Service and the Division of Plant Industry. Now, the Division of Plant Industry, they deal more with the endangered plants. They list them and everything. We work a lot with them. But so we have a 560 state listed plants, and this is under the preservation of the native flora of Florida. It's to protect rare plants in Florida. We're very lucky to have that. Some states don't. So that's a lot of species to work with. I have a list of them if you ever need a list, and the crosswalk by name and everything. You can contact me and I can send it to you. But yeah, there's a lot of, and FNA tracks 486. We have 130 of those rare plants. We have 130 are endemic. But federally listed plants, we have 68, 54 endangered, and 14 are threatened. Now, we also have these species that are being petitioned. They're called at-risk species. We can provide funds to study those too, and we can work with those because they're being petitioned for federal protection under the Endangered Species Act. So that was just a quick overview of the plant conservation program. Now we're going to just go into our activities that we have. So we administer federal forms in the grants and everything. Now that takes up more and more time every year, especially with COVID. Well, that's become quite a lot of work that we do with that because of the COVID projects being extended and things like that. And one of the big things that I do that I really try to remind people is fuel reduction. And it's kind of a confusing word, fuel reduction. You think of gas or something like that. The fuels are, it's vegetation. And when we're thinking about fuels, we're thinking about wildfire or prescribed fire and what's going to burn. And so a lot of these fire adapted plant species, if they don't get mowed or burned, they will get out competed, out shaded. Sometimes you can eat, and this happens a lot actually. You can have a place that's being burned very well, and the fire just doesn't reach some places where the rare plants are. So we just go in and just open up the habitat just with hand. This is just hand clearing with hand tools, small crews. I just even go about myself. And to me, this is probably, you can increase the population by 1,000% just by going up and keeping a habitat open. It works really, really good. So that's one thing I really concern myself with. We do a lot of plant rescue. This is a lot of stuff that's on the right-of-ways, the highway right-of-ways. We also do some development, stuff like that too. So I do a lot of mapping of species. We work with FNA, the Florida Natural Areas Inventory. That's the State Natural Heritage Program. We do a lot of work with them. And they have the rare plant and animal and natural community information. I try to remind people that if you have a really nice habitat that you like, that's out there, a nice well-maintained managed habitat, you can submit that natural community to the FNA and it'll get put into a database. And that's a good thing to do, because you may move away, or time passes on, and so those things are good to have in a database. But you can contact FNA more on that if you want to. I would like to suggest people consider that more, putting in natural communities and submitting data to FNA of really good natural communities in Florida. So we manage a database for all the literature that we've gathered from our researchers over the years. Do a lot of invasive plant management. That's very needed. We help with peer reviews. We help biologists. Sometimes we'll get researchers from out of state and we just go collect material for them so they don't have to come down here. We help with research authorizations. If you want to do research on the state forest, you'll have to get a research authorizations. We suggest going out 6 months ahead or even a year and talking with the place that you want to do research on to really make sure that what you're doing is going to work within their management. So do some presentations. We also have a land acquisition option that we have. And if there's federally listed plants on it, we can acquire that 75-25 ratio, match ratio, which is pretty nice. And we've been awarded a couple of those, but unfortunately they have fallen through. But that is an option. If a place has federally listed plants and you have the option of wanting it to be acquired, we can do that. We can. It's a lot. You got to have a lot of things up front. You got to have the willing seller and someone who's going to manage it in perpetuity. But that is an option that we have. Very important thing to consider. I do have a list of the plants. It's crosswalked if you're ever interested. People who work a lot with rare plants might find it handy to use because of all the different names for a single plant. Another interesting thing that we do, we tally all state of Florida expenditures on federally listed plants. So by the time you're done, and this is the Park Service, water management districts, it's the state forests, it's it's colleges, the major colleges and universities, they do work with federally listed plants, and we tally all those expenditures. And at the end, when the tally's finished, you get a really good idea who's working with different species. It's a pretty good thing. That's required by the Endangered Species Act. Now we also, folks here will be interested in the Endangered Plant Advisory Council. A lot of you may know it, but if you don't, these are the folks who look at the list of endangered and threatened plants, and they go over them and they add ones, they may remove them, they may downlist them, they may uplist them. And that's in October of every year. And there's the Rare Plant Task Force meeting too, also, that's underneath the same, the preservation of the native flora of Florida rule. Now we also down on Lake Wales Ridge State Forest, we have a biologist who works, and we keep in contact with them too, but they have 16 species of federally listed plants there, which we think is the most in the contiguous 48. Hawaii will definitely beat us out on this, but this is 16 federally listed plants within one state forest, within one entity. You know, that's quite a lot. But they monitor these species at all different kinds of levels there. It's a great state forest. I would highly suggest going to Lake Wales Ridge State Forest and looking around, wide open, but lots of great biodiversity. And they've been doing a lot of good restoration and burning there too. So yeah, there's 3 levels of monitoring that we do. You know, you might just do presence absence. That's level 1. That's just taking a point, you know, a lat long at plants and presence absence. It's very basic. Level 2 is looking at the population to see if it's stable or increasing. And level 3 is more like demographic work, like research into the breeding system of the plant. So here's a picture of a plant. I should start off with more pictures because that's what we all want anyway. But so here's an example of one of our programs. I mean, one of our projects that was a long time ago. It's been about 10 years, but Fairchild Tropical Botanical Garden did a great, they work with this, the key tree cactus. It's a columnar cactus that we have, and they've just propagated it a lot, and they've learned how to propagate it. And we've had a lot of decreases from the hurricanes and stuff like that, but they've done a great job at introductions and augmentations. And but here's an example. Now, if you're looking at what this program does, you would look at, you can answer questions like, what pollinates these giant tree cactuses? They used to be pretty common in the Keys, especially on Key West. I don't think there's many left on Key West. There's no natural populations left. But, you know, in Arizona, the saguaros, you know, they're pollinated by bats and stuff, but we don't have any bat pollinators here. So that would be a question that the grant could cover, you know, what are the pollinators, you know, what's modern day mystery, you know, we need to find these kinds of things out. It's very important. So those are the kinds of things that you can use the grant for. Here's another, excuse me. Here's another one for the Mikisuke Gooseberry. It's a rare shrub. Very interesting. This is the genus of gooseberries, ribes, throughout the country. There's a lot of gooseberry, especially out west. If you guys have been out in the Western Mountains, there's a lot of gooseberry that's pretty common that you just find out walking around. Here we only have one in Florida, and it has a distant population up in South Carolina, but it only grows in a few places. But we used the grant research to figure out what was predating its seeds. We were having trouble with seeds, germination and stuff like that. So there's all kinds of stuff. Taxus is another one, the Florida yew. I like to remind people that we have a shrub here in Florida, the Florida yew that has one of the best breast cancer fighting compounds in it. It was synthesized and mass produced by Florida State. Well, they learned how to do it. But I just like to remind people that we do have these great plants right here in Florida. So Torreya, another one that I'm sure a lot of you have heard about or worked with or seen. Right now, we're working with the Native Plant Society in Atlanta Botanical Garden to propagate it. And it's on a lot of private land, so we're working they're working with a lot of private landowners to help them locate and manage theirs. So we also look at genetics. We do fund a lot of genetic work, obviously through the universities and colleges, but two big things with those. It's a good way to look at minimum viable population and also to see how maybe degraded the genetic diversity is in a population compared to other ones. Here's a really good success story that we have also. This is down in Lake Wales Ridge in Archbold Biological Station, Bach Tower, and the Cincinnati Zoo, the crew, they do work with rare species, especially with tissue culture and tissue propagation. This species was thought to be extinct. It was recently found in the 80s, relocated. And we kind of keep finding more and more. It's kind of rare, about every 3 or 4 or 5 years, maybe another one will be found, but very, very rare plant. This is what you call an out west. This genus is out west. It's a different ziziphus, but it's what's called an ice cream tree for quail and for turkeys and stuff like that. It provides cover and great food, but it's very rare here, just from land conversion and stuff like that. But they have figured out this is about a 30-year project, and at the beginning, they had to start off just figuring out which plants were compatible with pollination, cross-pollination, genetics, outplantings, all this kind of stuff. They did outplantings like 15 years ago, and they're just starting to flower now. It's a very slow growing plant, very long project. But this has been a great success story because they have figured out all of the problems that they were having and how to solve each one by looking at its genetics and doing that kind of research. Pretty incredible. But now they're producing the fruits at Buck Tower. They produce seed fruits by the hundreds, I think, maybe more. But they're outplanting them, and that was a great one. So if you look at these things, if you do a grant with this program, you look at a plant's population status, maybe you want to look at life cycle, demography, you might want to look at the biology of the seeds. We need this kind of information for all the plants, even the federally listed ones. There's a lot of gaps in knowledge for rare plants, even the federal ones. This is another reason why it's good before you do a grant to ask the federal biologist and to look at the recovery plan and see what is needed to help recover the plant. But these kinds of things, they're not really known for a lot of the species that we have. So we, ecological considerations, pollination biology, these are the kinds of things that we fund this program. Propagation, Buck Tower, Fairchild, Atlanta Botanical Garden, Selby. we've just had a lot of great, botanical gardens done work with us. So we also provide funds for ex situ conservation, where you take the plants off site from their natural habitat and you grow them off site, and you can produce seeds and reintroduce them back, or whatever you would want to do, keep them for long-term storage and things like that. But we fund things like that too. Here's some species these work with. This is the potted gold lily. Now, this is not a federally listed plant. This is one that's being petitioned for federally listed plants. But it's been surveyed for. We've had a lot of experts come in. It's a great horticultural plant because it's a lily that grows in the South, and it grows in wetlands. Like you're not going to see this very much unless your feet are wet, when you're looking at it. It's in a seepage slopes and wet prairies, pitcher plant bogs, that kind of stuff. And it's a great plant. I'm guessing it's probably not going to be listed because it's in too many areas. It really is. But so these are the kind of species that we work with. The fringed orchids. Now we don't have any. We don't have any federally listed fringed orchids in the Platanthera, but we do work with them a little bit here and there. And we definitely try to help people. The funds for this grant are mostly for federally listed plants. But so a proposal for a crested orchid might get ranked very low, unfortunately. But so we would, but we do a little bit of work with these here and there, mainly to keep them off the endangered species list. We definitely try to help out with fire. I think everyone who's watching here knows how important fire is. And we try to help facilitate that. We try to help refund programs that do prescribe fire. And a lot of the rare plants, they are adapted to fire. And, you can have a very similar good response with mowing. Mowing does mimic fire, and it actually can be even better for plants. Some species, I know some species plants like Luton's polygula does not like to be mowed. I don't know, something about it that doesn't like, but the other ones love it, and that they do better in the mowed areas than they do in places that are burned. But so mowing and fire maintain that open habitat, you get that sun, and remove all the competing vegetation and stuff like that. But the temperatures can stimulate different stages in flowering and germination and seed set and stuff. And it can reduce herbivory and desiccation. So the Florida Forest Service, this is another thing I was just talking about, the Florida Forest Service. They did set a record in 2015 and 16 for the most acres burned on the state forest. And I think it's a world record, for one organization to burn that much. But they burned over 200,000 acres that year. So it's a very inexpensive way to maintain the landscape. So the Florida Forest Service is pretty aggressive with that. And they have standards. There are standards that are there. I can just show you how one of the projects that we have is on Seminole State Forest. And it is it's an outlier parcel. It was purchased just for its biodiversity. It's got amazing biodiversity. Look at all the rare species on this map. You really just can't throw a football without either going over one or hitting one or whatever, but it's just loaded. But it needs fire. And you can just see from some of these charts, we monitored it. This is it from the aerial. You can see in the middle there, it's not the water, that's a sand mine, but you can see the undeveloped kind of L-shaped warea tract in the middle. And it's really high quality sandhill. It's the last vestige of a unique natural community. It's unique. The species assemblage is unique for that area. And but we do plots out there, and the data is just incredible. You don't have to look too closely at this. You can see from these bar charts what happens when you put fire out there, how many more plants you get and everything. And that's the species there. But it's a stronghold for it in that area. So this is another thing that just shows, if you look at the low numbers, those are the areas that have not been burned, and the ones that have been burned just have so many more plants. Now here's another chart too. It's some of the most explicit charts we have. You can see unburned and burned, just how many more plants are there. But around here and down here, I'm out of Tallahassee, and that's Tate's Hill there. Those hot spots, those are areas with the Florida Natural Areas Inventories, Natural Heritage Programs data that show where hot spots are for their. So you can see, the Apalachicola, as a lot of people here know, is a biodiversity hotspot. And Tate's Hill on its western edge catches some of that. So I do a lot of work locally over at Tate's Hill, because we have 4 species of federally listed plants at Tate's Hill. And we work with those. There's actually a lot of state listed plants there too. It's an amazing place also, if you haven't been there. Now you kind of need a guide to tell you some places to go. But there's plenty of places to go. You can just go out there and wander, but it's a great it's a great state forest also. But so we've gotten to visit a lot of those populations out there. So in a typical year, like the red stars on this map will show you where we get around to, or where I get around to do some projects. And we can do more. We can help out with your projects if you want. You don't have to get a grant, but I can come out for a day and do some mapping or some surveying or fuel reduction or invasives or whatever. So you can just contact me. Here's a local one, a federally listed local one, Florida skullcap. We just had a lot of research done on that. Miami University did a bunch. We have great butterworts. Here's Godfrey's butterwort. Great populations out at Tate's Hill and at Apalachicola National Forest. White birds in a nest, another federally listed plants. We're working with this one too. I do fuel reduction on this species. This picture here is a picture of fuel reduction. I don't know if you can see the white flowers very good, but before this picture was taken, this is in a burn unit that was getting burned regularly, but the fire wasn't getting to this one portion of where this rare species is. So we just went in and opened it up, and the population increased by 1,000% or something, just off the charts. I didn't even want to walk in there. There's so many of them in there. But so we are going to get to this fuel reduction thing. And this is kind of what it looks like when you don't have fire or mowing or fuel reduction, and that's fine. That there's just less species there. Now, are there species there that we can't see in the seed bank? Yeah, because in the seed bank, there's seeds. When the plants are there, they drop hundreds, thousands of seeds in the soil, and they stay dormant until a fire comes over them, or when they get enough light or heat or whatever. But in between times, you can get this. We've all seen this. This is what a lot of Florida looks like. It's very shrubby, whereas it's supposed to be a little bit more open now. Here in this right of way, this is mowed, but this maintains some of the most diverse plant assemblages that we have. This is up at Ralph E. Simmons State Forest. And, but you can see that the mowing does a great job of just keeping the habitat open. Look at the habitat on the edges of this right away. They're just thick, impenetrable thickets. So the only place left for these plants, they used to be out there in those thickets, but it hasn't been burned. So the only place they're left is in these mowed right-of-ways. And so you need to keep them going and keep the mowing going. Don't stop the mowing. Don't stop the mowing, because the shrubs will take over within 2 or 3 years. And the plants may still be there. They may still be an underground rootstock or a seed bank, but every year they just slowly go further and further away until they are extirpated. So these mowed right-of-ways are extremely important. And when I was working with FNA, I noticed that a lot of the rare species, plants and animals, were in the right-of-ways. And I think a lot of people know that here, this audience. But it's extremely important to keep that mowing going and to keep that open habitat. These are, in fact, in these right-of-ways, these are some of the last populations that we have, because the surrounding areas are not burned. So if we lose these right-of-ways, those are the last of the populations. So it's very important to look at right-of-way management. And I vote for, wherever you have these rare species assemblage, to really encourage, burn and mow around them, to encourage them out of the right-of-way, get them back on the conservation lands, and make a good plan for them, and get it back open again. So that's that place that was, I showed you that picture of. Now it's been burned, still kind of shrubby out there, but I tell you, out in front of you in this picture, there's tons of rare species. There's pine lilies and pitcher plants and all that kind of stuff. But then 2 to 3 more years later, it goes right back to where it was. So you got to really knock those things out. Here's another species we work with up at Angus Golson Nature Park in Chattahoochee. It's a federally listed silene. It's a campion. We'll go out and do a survey for them. We'll have 3 or 4 days, we'll have lots of volunteers to go out and look at a population and just really figure out what a population is and map it and everything. So that's another kind of thing that we do, plant surveys and stuff like that. Apalachicola Rosemary is another one that we have helped out with. We provide funds for research. But the invasives is a thing. I got a lot of experience doing it. So here you have, English ivy. This is in a woodland, what you call a beech magnolia forest or a hardwood forest, upland hardwood forest. And so you have, from a house site, English ivy going out, and they're covering up all the rare spring ephemeral wildflowers like trilliums, trout lilies, all those kind of species. So we have figured out a way to spray with herbicide, spray the English ivy, and it doesn't kill the trilliums, because we do it at a certain time of year when the trilliums are, and the other spring ephemerals are underground. And we get great, these are big. Look how big these trilliums are. They're kind of larger than some of the other areas. So I'm glad to see this, because I'm worried about what herbicides do. But not only that, we have really good germination rates from them. This is in the area that was just sprayed. And, they're coming up from seed very well. Oh, sorry. Sorry about that. So, a lot of times you can figure out the best time of year to spray, and you should really consider it too, for not killing other, non-target sprays. So when you are doing invasives and things like that, you get to watch out for that kind of stuff, and make sure that you're not killing anything that you don't need to. But so the program, we welcome volunteers to do research or, whatever they want to do, conduct field botany. There's also volunteer opportunities to do stuff at your computer, just online research and stuff like that we would love to have some help with. The Florida Forest Service has a really big volunteer force. I think they did over 100,000 total hours in 1 year, like 49 employees. So let me know if you want to do any volunteer work. And the Florida State Forest organization is the Friends of Florida State Forest. And you can become part of that if you're interested in that. So yeah, those are the kinds of things that we have. We just invite people to approach us, for these kind of grant funds to solve all the mysteries that are out there. Here we go. Thank you. That's the end of the presentation.
Thanks, Michael. I do have a few questions from our audience. Diane asked about the burn cycle with regard to the endangered species. If they haven't gone to seed, does the burn cycle get adjusted, or is that not a consideration?
No, see, that's a great discussion, because what you really, if you want to try to do the best job that you can, what you do is you look at the local burn history. To answer your question, yes, but fires occur. They occur when plants are flowering and fruiting. Plants are used to that too. If a plant is flowering or fruiting and it gets burned, it's okay with that. It'll flower or fruit later that year, or it'll do it next year. It's adapted to that. Same thing with mowing. The plant's used to it. These plants know how to live underground. But if you really, really, really want to do the best job you can and find out the best time to burn for the species that you're doing, you look at the stumps, the dendrochronology of oldest pine trees in the area, and see when they're burned and this is a local kind of a thing too. If you can, that data may not be available for where you are, but you just try to mimic the timing of the fire along with the dendrochronology of the pines, and really, if you have a species that's in a burned area, you can figure out when it's flowering and fruiting and try not to burn around it. But for the most part, the plant's going to be okay with getting burned when it's flowering or fruiting, because the plants are adapted to that. That's happened forever. Does that answer your question?
I think so.
Okay.
Another question is, do you have a program on iNaturalist, like FWC has the Florida Nature Trackers? Does your program have anything on iNaturalist where people can interact?
It does not. We do not have that. No, we don't. But we would definitely be interested in hearing about that or something.
Okay. Here's a good one. Is the Forest Service doing work on issues related to endangered plant survival and climate change?
No, I don't believe so. We not really, not with that as a focus.
Melanie asked if there's a bill being considered to reduce prescribed fire. I'm not sure what that's referring to.
Yeah, I imagine there are bills like that out there, but I have not heard of that. I'm not familiar.
Okay, and then you early on talked about Laurelwelt disease. Mike asked if there's a replanting program for the red bay tree.
That's a great question. Gosh, when it was coming, we got a bunch of seeds from the red bays around here, and just direct sowed them, in places that we thought they would, just to kind of prepare. No, to answer your question, there is not a program for that. I wish there was. It came so fast and just wiped out them all. So now the problem with the Lauraceae is, the family of trees that they are, they have these real big fruits that have a lot of lipids in it, and they're very fatty, to entice animals to eat it and disperse the seed, but they don't last very long. How some seeds like magnolia, their seeds can last a really, really long time. A lot of wildflowers are like that too. They've evolved to have seeds that last a long time. Some plants don't. That's not their strategy. But the laurels have a very low seed set, and you can't store them for very long. So it's a problem. It's a problem and I haven't seen that much on red bay regeneration and how the whole thing's coming back. I have seen in the field the past few times I've been out in the field, red bays, small red bays, and they weren't getting hit. I saw that in a couple places I went recently. I haven't heard any kind of formal discussion or anything like that on what we should do now that the red bay wilt has gone through and just tore up the red bays. But no, I don't.
Let's see, let's just get one more question in. I know we're up against our 3 o'clock time. But Vicki asked, she said she has a golden aster scrub, or lives near a golden aster scrub, and FDOT is doing a road widening project through it. Her question is, how can she find out if they will be harvesting or if she can help with that? And I think that question could be expanded to the broader issue of road construction, and if we're aware of plant populations, what can be done to help preserve those or move them? Is that something that your department would work with?
I can definitely direct you to that. It's not through our department, but it is through the Division of Plant Industry. And I can, if you contact me, I can put you in contact with the right people to know that. I'm thinking, I know the golden aster scrub, and I'm pretty sure they're probably going to do something like that, but contact me about that, and or contact the people the land managers there. That's a county property, right? Golden Aster, isn't that Manatee County?
I'm not sure, but maybe she'll type that in the chat before we finish this conversation.
I'm pretty sure it's a county preserve. If you go talk to the land managers, and they'll and just make sure. Oh yes, to answer your question, yes, there's a lot that you can do. In fact, they probably need your help too. One of the best things is to know early on, so you can collect seed instead of moving the plants. I mean, you can move the plants, but it's also, you can get thousands of seeds off the plants, So the earlier you know about it, the more you can plan to harvest the seeds before the road widening. Yeah, and so yes, to answer your question, yes, you can help with that, and I'm thinking they might already do that. Bach Tower Gardens does a huge amount of work with that, especially with golden aster, the species Florida golden aster, and they're probably in on that project. I don't know anything about the road widening project, but please contact me, and we can I can put you in contact with the right people on that for sure.
Great. Well, we've shared your contact information in the chat. And if anyone didn't get it, you're welcome to email us at info@FLA Wildflowers, and we'll get you in touch with Mike. And if you have any questions after today's presentation, or if we didn't get to yours, please feel free to email us as well, and we will pass those on to Mike. I just want to add one more thing. We do have a field trip coming up on February 12th to Angus Golson Nature Park, which Michael mentioned, to see the trout lilies in bloom, as well as some other interesting wildflowers. So if you are up in that part of the state, in the Panhandle, you don't want to miss this field trip. It's going to be awesome. So thank you so much, Michael, for your presentation today, and for taking the time out to talk with us. We appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
And we're recording this webinar, so we'll have it posted on our YouTube and website within 24 hours or so. So look for that as well. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Hey.